What's up, you freaks? Welcome back to Rabbit Hole Recap with Matt and Marty. It's your boy Marty Bent here on a Monday, October 8th, 2018. Recording a little bit earlier today. It's around 3:45. The price of Bitcoin is at $6,633. And again, we have a beautiful sponsor this week, same as last week, and that is the Cash App. You already know that the Cash App is the number one finance app on the App Store. What you might not know is that you can also put Cash App in your wallet with the Cash Card. It's the only debit card that offers instant rewards and comes packed with premium features not even a credit card can offer, like Boost. Get up to 10% off at Whole Foods, Chipotle, Domino's, Shake Shack. You got a favorite coffee shop in your neighborhood. $1 off every day. It's pretty money. Especially in this coffee market that we're experiencing right now. The Cash Card puts you in control of your money with extra in-app safety features that let you pause your card with a touch. Unlike your credit card, there are no fees ever, and a credit check isn't required to get one. So you just sign up for the app, order the card. You can design it yourself. You get to put a cool little signature. If you're into Bitcoin, you can put the Bitcoin money symbol sign there. You can get really creative with it. Express yourself, Squares will let you express yourself with these Cash App cards and their Boost program. So we're not using the other apps anymore. I actually deleted them from my phone the other week, all of them except for the Cash App. So visit the App Store or Google Play Market to download the Cash App now and get your free Cash Card today. Do it, freaks. It's the best app out there for buying Bitcoin, in my opinion. And that was the official Cash App. I want to... Again, obviously, my co-host Matt is here, but we have a third guest with us today, or a third person with us today in the apartment studio, and that is Murad Mahmudov. He's come to shoot the shit with us about some of these topics today. Murad, welcome back to the pod.
Glad to be here. Hello, Marty. Hello, Matt. Thanks for the invite once again.
Yeah. Matt, how are we feeling today?
Well, I'm feeling pretty bullish. So it was important that we brought our bear on, so that everyone could see both sides.
Yeah, we've got opposing views on this couch right now. Matt has a tennis league that begins tomorrow night on Tuesday night, so we're not going to be recording on Tuesdays anymore. So, a little bit of a dox, but just to explain why we're putting this out a day earlier from now on. The tennis league's in Austin, Texas, so if you're interested, you can search there. So Murad, we brought you on. You're the bearish bull we know. You're pretty bearish right now. You are the most outspoken bull on a long-term perspective. Why don't you walk us through what you're thinking right now from a market cycle perspective?
So before I delve deeper into this, I would like to say that there are few people on the surface of the planet who are more bullish than me in the long term. However, and I every time I go into any podcast or even talk to anybody in real life, I strongly reaffirm my belief that this is going to be a $100 trillion asset sometime in the future. However, I don't think that precludes me from being pragmatic and from being sort of realistic short term and being bearish for another month or two. I think that we are only roughly about halfway through this bear cycle. And I think in terms of time, and I think that the bottom isn't quite in yet, and I expect at least one more sort of major leg down before we sort of fully bottom out. And my sort of thinking comes from both sort of a mixture of fundamentals and technicals.
Become a huge TA slut these days. You're in love with TA.
Guilty as charged. However, yeah, I mean, I like to combine sort of everything I can get my hands on, but a lot of the fundamental indicators and many of the technical, sort of long-term technical indicators are still signaling that there is a little bit more downside that is more likely than not, in my opinion. Of course, this is highly debatable, but MVT signal, for what they're worth, MVRV that me and my partner David Puyel recently put out, and several other indicators are sort of signaling that there's a little bit more downside still to come. Of course, I could be wrong. There is always a subjectivity component to this, but that is my opinion right now, yeah.
Yeah, my gut feeling, just personally, just from sort of the state of the consciousness of crypto Twitter in general and what people are calling for, I think we're going to go down a bit further. I particularly liked what Joe Weisenthal said when he was on the podcast. Like, the bubble has truly burst when people start losing jobs and respectable finance journalists stop going on crypto podcasts because it's too embarrassing for the reputation. Matt, do you see any credence in this short-term view?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll hit that point. I mean, I think that in 2014, 2015, we hit that point.
Yeah.
We've come a long way. You know, I don't know if this cycle there'll be an embarrassing moment for a lot of the, you know, blockchain, not Bitcoin people and, you know, altcoin pushers. But for actual Bitcoiners and Bitcoin proponents, I don't know if it's going to be that devastating. I'm not in the business of calling bottoms, and that's my investment strategy as well. So I mean, I have two big questions for Murad. I would say, how low do you think we're going to go? And what would happen to change your mind?
So all things considered, I think that we will bottom somewhere. And I'm talking sort of a prolonged multi-month bottom, somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000. 43 to 44,000 in particular, if I had to narrow it down. But sort of that general area is where I expect the bottom to happen.
And what would happen over the next couple of weeks for you to change your opinion on that? Is there anything you're watching that you would be like, okay, I'm not a bear anymore?
Well, if we sort of close on the weekly above 8,500, then of course that my line of thinking would be invalidated, and I would be much more open to a bullish position at that point. But the last sort of, I mean, just one of the dozens of things I'm looking at, first and foremost, like the descending triangle that we've been in for the past several months is still intact. A lot of sort of the local tops for Bitcoin were rejected by the 30 week moving average or the 200 daily moving average. And right now, as of right now, it stands somewhere around 7,200. As of right now, I see that as a very strong resistance. Even if we do bounce from here, I don't think we breach 7,000, 7,100 at most. And as I've already mentioned, I'm still sort of a little bit more bearish in the short term, but I will be a buyer of last resort in the end, by the end of the year, especially in Q1 of next year. And I expect Bitcoin to bottom somewhere in the beginning of next year, and I'll definitely be sort of stepping in as a value investor myself at that point in time.
Bang, bang.
Well, it's good to know we can count on him.
So your mind's only going to change via the price charts. You're not going to pay attention to any like the fundamental news coming out or stuff that we would talk about.
So like bear markets, particularly in Bitcoin, I don't think that they end on any one piece of news. I think sort of sellers have to exhaust themselves and a certain amount of time has to pass. I mean, these cycles of emotion sort of have to wane. I think a lot of other sort of non-Bitcoin crypto assets and quote unquote blockchain projects, they're still viciously overvalued still. I do expect them to go much lower from here. And if Bitcoin goes just a bit lower from here, I expect them to sort of collapse. We haven't had a capitulation yet. I mean, the volumes have been dwindling. Volatility has been dwindling. A lot of sort of factors have been going down, but I don't think we need one final capitulation. We need despondency. We need people to be angry about Bitcoin and this asset class in general. And then we need sort of a prolonged period of apathy. And only then I think we can, there's still too much hopium, so to speak. People calling for 12,000 this morning, people calling for 9,000 immediately. It's just unrealistic, right? Once we exhaust all these irrational bulls, and once sort of people fully exit this market, we need to exhaust all the weak hands. We need more long-term thinkers. We need more long-term hodlers. And sort of once sort of the bottom is dominated by those kinds of people, then we can sort of start having a serious conversation about a reversal and moves upwards, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think one event in particular that happened the last couple days that Brendan Bernstein pointed out on Twitter today was Maker price explodes 25% through $750. I didn't even know it was that expensive. As it gets exposure to Augur, and wait for it, 54 more daily active users. So I believe Maker's market cap went up 160 mil. For each additional daily active user, that's worth $3 million in market cap. So these markets are clearly irrational at the moment.
And A16Z just invested in Maker, and they got a discount. They paid like $250.
They paid a
250
66% discount?
Major league discount.
How is that even possible?
Well, I
They
mean,
just buy that much
they're
bulk?
doing like infrastructure for 3 years. There's like other elements to the deal, but and it was sold from the treasury, the team's treasury.
Oh.
So they basically like undercut the market and sold it at a discount in bulk to A16Z.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have zero thoughts. It was something that happened.
If I understand correctly, A16Z were already an investor in one of their sort of previous rounds. Something like this might have been in the clause. Perhaps it wasn't. In the Maker's governance framework, it doesn't really talk about sort of this side of their decision-making process. A lot of people are saying that it's not quite a decentralized autonomous organization as of right now. I will admit though that Maker is. I'm not that big of a fan of Ethereum and that particular ecosystem. However, Maker is one of the less than a dozen functional products on Ethereum, and it's very commendable despite the 60, 65, 70% collapse of Bitcoin and 80% collapse or 85% collapse in the price of Ethereum. Maker and their stablecoin has held up relatively well.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's very commendable. I'm not sure how well their crypto collateralized model scales to large amounts and large volumes. That is sort of the next frontier for them. However, here's the thing. There is the amount of quality crypto assets in the space is extremely, extremely small. There are more than like 2,000 or 5,000 cryptocurrencies, but I would say like there are less than 7 like non-scams. Mm-hmm. And so and some would argue even less.
Yeah.
Maker, their sort of governance token is sort of one of those. There is really a hunger for quality in this space. A lot of crypto funds and crypto asset managers cannot justify holding predominantly Bitcoin. Otherwise, like many of their LPs could just do that themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So they have to sort of deploy into other sort of quote unquote premium crypto assets, and I think that's like kind of what's going on with Maker right now as well. And I think the public seeing A16Zs and sort of other institutional investors support in this way is sort of confident about Maker, and that's why it's been attracting a lot of attention over the past couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was one thing in particular that people were worried about was Maker during the Ethereum price fall. They were wondering how that was going to affect their collateral or whatever they're doing to make their stablecoin. Right. It seems like it weathered the storm, at least up to this point.
So I agree with the analysis that Augur itself only has like 50 users right now. However, I think like we have to be sort of thinking more in the long term. This integration shows that it's very likely that other functional dApps will follow, and DAI could become sort of the go-to medium of exchange of that whole ecosystem, which would be bullish for DAI, I guess. But I don't think that I don't think that Maker will outperform Bitcoin over the next 10 years. I just don't. So I really personally don't see that much of a point in holding it.
Yeah. Thank you for the perfect segue fodder, because the Yale Endowment has decided that they want to hodl some crypto, and it looks like they're investing in what's his name, Fred
Swenson, right?
Yeah. Well.
No, they're Coinbase
Swenson is allocating to Paradigm, which is Fred Ehrson's fund.
Ehrson's fund, yeah.
Yeah.
This was another reason why I wanted to bring Murad on, because you said a lot of bullish things about Swenson, right?
That's right. I mean, it's a well-known fact that David Swenson has been a trendsetter in the endowment space for the last 2 decades. What he does, the rest of the endowments, the Ivy syndicates, the university managers, and just other big asset managers with long-time horizons in general will undoubtedly copy and follow in the coming years. So if Yale is now investing in crypto funds, I strongly expect this kind of trend to continue going forward.
Yeah, no, that's actually one thing my dad was hassling me about like 6-7 months ago. He's like, because that's whenever they released their yearly report and they talk about like their own alternative investment section, and he was like begging me to reach out to them to be like, they should be getting into Bitcoin. So they are usually first movers in the space, and seeing them actually move into the space is huge. Do you guys know the structure of the fund they're investing in? Like, is it predominantly like?
I don't think it's.
What are they doing at? What are they doing at Paradigm?
Not predominantly Bitcoin.
Do they have one fund? Do they have different funds, or they have a suite of funds?
So here's the thing. I believe that Yale is investing both. I mean, these are just rumors. Like, don't hold me to this information. But I believe Yale has invested in both Paradigm and the Andreessen Horowitz new crypto fund.
You heard it here first.
Right. No. I mean, this has been
Okay.
this has been posted online for the past week. But I think that, and once again, these are just rumors. But I think both of these funds will hold somewhere between, I don't know, 10 to 30% of their assets in Bitcoin, which is good for Bitcoin. But once, like, similarly to our previous discussion, they can't just justify holding Bitcoin. Like, then there wouldn't be like raison d'etre for them to exist, right? And so, I think a lot of people believe that sort of we're obviously not done with the whole altcoin, private placement, ICO, discount sort of phenomena. In the next bullish run, it will continue. Some of these altcoins will survive. New ones will undoubtedly come along as well. Andreessen Horowitz and Paradigm, of course, with the Sequoia and the Coinbase founding pedigree behind them, they are admittedly well capitalized to benefit from a lot of opportunities and to get discounts, to get into this thing, to get into good quote unquote good opportunities early, to get into some like altcoin private placements early, to get into some VC style equity investments early, etc. And some of those might even outperform Bitcoin, like especially on medium term horizons. And I think like those kinds of things in particular, these funds will be engaged in. So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, but either way, this is good for Bitcoin.
Oh yeah,
as the colloquial saying goes.
Slowly but surely, it seeps further and further into the psyche of the masses. You had Soulja Boy dropping a terrible song, but it was titled
Absolutely
Bitcoin.
Horrible song.
Terrible song, but
all press is good press.
All press is good
Bitcoin
press.
Soldiers on.
He tweeted Bitcoin last night. I don't know if like Soulja Boy is like who we want to be our saving grace here, but it's happening.
I have Litecoins. Bitcoin's my favorite one.
He's a maximalist.
He is a maximalist.
The thing I liked about his Bitcoin tweet was it was literally just Bitcoin period, that's the tweet I want Trump to tweet. Just nothing. There's no context whatsoever.
Maybe Trump paid Soulja Boy to sort of like flight test it for him.
No, Soulja Boy bought some, and through the distributed incentives of Bitcoin, once you buy it, you want to shill it.
He said he made 100 racks off of it.
What is a rack? I was talking.
I'm not sure, but I believe
think a rack might be
$1,000. So 100 racks would be $100,000.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Let's see. Not too shabby.
Let's see if he can hodl through this bear market that Murad was describing at the beginning of the episode. Let's see if he's a true hodler, a true believer, or just an attention whore. I think it might be the latter, but we will find out. Soulja Boy.
I guess we will.
Soulja Boy. We're gonna see if you can weather this.
Soulja Boy's a hodler. Murad hates hodling. It's important for us to say the word as often as possible. My take basically on Murad's bear thesis is Murad is going to buy Bitcoin regardless. And he's either going to end up doing it at like 4,500 or he's going to end up doing it at like 11,000.
Well, either I'm right and I'll buy it at 4,500, or I'm wrong and I'll buy it at 8,500. But I'm buying it either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. But instead of 8,500, I think you'll be in denial until like
They don't say
11-ish.
They don't say risk it for the biscuit for nothing.
What was the price this time last year? Like about the same, right? Are we about even? Segwit 2X was what, in like a month?
It was.
Segwit 2X was like November 2nd.
What's today?
Today
Today's
is
the
October
8th.
8th.
It was at like 4,300.
It was at 4,300 this time last year?
Yeah.
Did you think it was going to hit 20,000?
No, we had been down in the dumps for so long. I didn't think.
I thought Segwit 2X, who knew what was going to happen? I thought Segwit 2X was going to fail, but I thought everything was going to be way messier than it was.
Some people were heavily hedging into Bcash during that. It turned out to be a poor decision.
Hedging, great idea.
No, yeah, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, like we're saying, maybe that's fundamental news. Doesn't matter in the long run, but it is good to see endowment funds stepping into the game. I mean, that's a huge news if Yale's willing to allocate a percentage of their fund, just as a trendsetter in that particular niche.
My belief is that like that move from 3,000 to 20,000 that we had in 2017 might have been a little too rapid. Even though Bitcoin's fundamentals are improving, that change in price still sort of outpaced it. And obviously we're in a cool down period right now, but I believe that the full cool down hasn't completed itself. And in October 2014, you've also had a very sort of tight month with very low volumes and very low volatility, which was followed by essentially a subsequent capitulation in November, December, and January, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, the bear well. The anniversary was a couple days ago, actually, the bear well. Yeah.
Have any of you guys, by any chance, were part of the assassination on Bearwell on Bitstamp in back then?
No, I had already capitulated into hodl mode. Like this was probably, I kept doing my thing. I was writing a fucking weekly newsletter, but I just thought it was probably a horrible investment.
If you haven't seen the Bearwell video, go watch it. It's pretty hilarious. We'll link to it, but it's you literally, and it's just like a video of the order book across like, what was it, 30 hours? So the Bearwell, he famously sold 30,000 Bitcoin at $300. Just market sold them. All on Bitstamp. So over the period of time that it took for his order to get completely bought by the market, people were just watching the order book, and the price, I think it slingshotted up a little bit like immediately after his order was filled. So yeah, he sold 30,000 Bitcoin again at $300. Probably regrets that decision.
But then we dropped to, I think we dropped to 152 after that. We wicked down
but
to
over the course of
152,
9 months.
Yes, yeah. So I probably stopped buying like right before the Bearwell.
Yeah.
The Bearwell was like, I remember that too because it was crazy because he didn't even try any strategy or anything. He just put up a huge, or she just put up a huge sell order all in the books at once.
Somebody made like
the drawings.
The drawing, yeah.
Remember?
The drawing.
Next topic.
Next topic is actually interesting. We talk about attack vectors here and how we really need to think about every attack vector through which Bitcoin can be targeted. And some news headline this week that made Matt in particular think the supply chain was the big hack in China. So the tiny chip that hardware manufacturers and the U.S. government, I guess, have found in products that were manufactured in China. It's a backdoor to our products and basically our data. And this highlights a very pressing need in the Bitcoin hardware wallet space in particular, where we need to know that our hardware is not backdoored. So how do we take care of that attack vector? But first, like, can you explain in more detail what happened?
Well, so first of all, there's been a lot of back and forth. All the companies involved, and of course the Chinese government, all deny it. But Bloomberg has like basically doubled down, I guess. So it's questionable whether or not this specific story is true. But the idea is that in Chinese factories, while these server chips were being built, they put a little backdoor chip on the. They put a little backdoor on the chip, and then those slip through, and those go in Apple servers and Amazon servers and Department of Defense servers and all this other, highly vital resources, and they're being compromised. Now, this has been speculated forever. We've seen it on smaller scale, like during Snowden. Part of the leaks showed that the U.S. government was intercepting Cisco routers and servers, and they were putting backdoors in them, and then they were continuing on to their destination. So, regardless if this is true, you should just assume, unfortunately, that every single piece of hardware is compromised. So then, from that point, particularly where like Bitcoin is concerned in storing private keys and like any kind of private information you have to operate under this mindset, unfortunately. So all your hardware is compromised. You have to use multiple different. You should split up don't put all your eggs in one basket. Split up among multiple hardware devices. Try and use the most trustworthy hardware devices. Simpler is better. That's why it goes two ways with Bitcoin hardware wallets. They're a perfect attack because a hardware wallet is being used to store something valuable. But at the same time, they're able to be made really simply. So it's harder to camouflage an attack in something that's purpose built, right? So the main rule of thumb is to just nothing that is important or private keys should ever touch the internet. You should just never have them touch
no
the internet.
screenshots, nothing.
At least if that happens, at least if you do that, even if the hardware is compromised, someone still needs to like break in your house and like grab the device, right? Like they physically have to get the device. So that's where all cold storage and stuff comes from, right? So like you need to anything that's important, just don't connect it to the internet. It's the unfortunate reality we live in. There's no real solution, so you just have to, you have to act accordingly.
Yeah. Know the attack surface and best practices. So I would say hardware wallet.
The internet's a big thing. Just
the internet's
if you're going to use hardware wallets, use multiple hardware wallets. Maybe put in some cold storage in there. Like, compartmentalize it so that if any individual thing is compromised, then they don't get everything. Right? And all cloud services, anything you share on a cloud service. I mean, Google came out today, and they also got hacked recently. So any cloud services, you just assume that they're all that information is going to be public, and just act accordingly. And use end-to-end encrypted, open source tools if you can instead.
Yeah, Keybase being one of them. One of my favorite, Keybase.io, one of my favorite end-to-end encryption tools. Really cool product they have there. I think it's an underrated one too.
Yeah, that one's good.
Murad, do you have any thoughts on this topic in particular?
Nothing in particular comes to mind, but from what I hear, sort of a lot of the reports seem to have been a little bit overstated with the sort of the amount of the amount of infiltration that they were able to perpetrate. Once again, sort of, I'm not a hardware expert, so Odell, I believe, is definitely sort of more well versed in this particular area.
What was also interesting is I saw it came out today that Bloomberg pays bonuses if you move the markets.
What?
It's like kind of makes sense because they like want like groundbreaking reporting that's like super important. That's their argument, and it's like on a case by case basis. But they do end up giving bonuses for moving the markets, which is really fucked up. Like Supermicro, who was the main manufacturer involved, their stock went down like 50%.
Is that illegal?
We'll find out, right?
Well, doesn't that create a sort of perverse incentive for journalists to create like sensational?
It's a terrible moral hazard.
I mean, I agree. I think it's pretty crazy to me. I mean, Bloomberg's argument is it's all truth. So as long as we're sure it's truth, it doesn't matter that it
Well,
moves
we're
the
finding
markets.
out
That's showing proper valuations. They're doing their job, and it's showing proper valuations and stuff.
But history has shown that not
I
every
know.
every news story is 100% fact.
It's definitely not 100% fact. You can just assume that every news story is not 100% fact, right? Or yeah, I mean, when you read a Bitcoin story and you're like, oh my God, they got so much wrong, and then you just realize.
Bloomberg, what the fuck? I don't like that.
Yeah, well,
Big moral hazard. All right. Enough
Either
about-
way, it doesn't matter, though. That's my point, right? It doesn't matter. You should still just assume that all this shit is compromised. Oh, and the other thing is if you order like Bitcoin shit online, you have two issues that you're doing. The hardware wallet company or whatever they have your address now. So if you don't use a P.O. box, they're going to have your address. And then the second thing is if your government or someone is trying to attack you, they can intercept that wallet in transit while it's going through transit, and then they can fuck with your wallet and possibly compromise it and take your keys or your computer or anything. So like when you buy electronics, especially Bitcoin specific electronics, like you should buy them in a store with cash. It's like a really good rule of thumb.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah. Make sure get a P.O. box or buy a person in cash. I'm like thinking to myself. I'm like,
Start getting paranoid, people. No one's going to do it for you.
Very paranoid. All right, next topic. Bitcoin Core version 0.17 has been released. It's got a couple cool upgrades here. If you want to check out Bitcoin Magazine, we'll put the link in the description. Aaron Van Weerdum, as always, wrote up a nice sort of description of what to look forward to in version 0.17 if you decide to upgrade. Some of the improvements being improved coin selection, easily create and use new wallets. There's a non-HD to HD wallet upgrade, which is going to be really cool. Watch only wallets, partially signed Bitcoin transactions, pruning from the user interface, which is beginning to separate the node development from the GUI development, I believe. So the first step of that process has begun, and that will create many efficiencies in future upgrades. Matt, what are your thoughts?
A GUI is like the interface you see. So instead of like command line, it has like a graphical interface you can see. The cool thing is the two cool things for me are coin selection, which in fee crisis, if we have a fee crisis again where fees are going up really high, it handles the fee selection way better because you have all these different UTXOs. You have all these different little transactions in your wallet, and when it combines it together, it's going to do it more efficiently. And then the second thing is that HD wallet feature is basically is you can now back up your wallet as a seed, right? And if you already had a wallet before, in previous versions, you couldn't switch to seed backup, and now you can. So that's always useful. Seeds are nice because it's a really easy way to
better
back
for the
up.
layman.
It's a really easy way to back up without connecting to the internet, like we were talking about before, right? Like you don't want to touch the internet, so if you have a seed phrase, all you have to do is write that shit down on a piece of paper. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Big upgrade.
And it fixes the most recent vulnerability. So.
Yeah, I mean 16.3 did that, so
Yeah.
it was already patched. But yeah, first major release after the last bug and quick patch. Murad, anything to say? Have you looked into this?
No, I'm a huge fan of Aaron's articles. I read them all religiously, and the second they come out, I really hope he continues doing what he's been doing for the past several years. In particular, his sort of last series of articles about
privacy
in general, and Bitcoin as a privacy coin, and then sort of privacy in the space in general have been very illuminating and enlightening. And he's just, I think he's number one journalist in like Bitcoin.
I said this on Pop's podcast. I said he's far and away the best journalist. Like, there's nobody that compares to the caliber of writing and synthesis that he does for the space in particular.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The privacy series was dope too.
Yeah, it was really dope. Shout out Aaron Van Weerdum. Aaron, invitation to the pod is still open. If you're listening to this, just want to remind you. Yeah, so staying on Bitcoin development and statistics, SegWit adoption just crossed the 50% threshold. Pretty quick, I would say, in a little over a year.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's phenomenal. And this is like a perfect example where you have soft incentives. it's a voluntary usage if you want to switch to Segwit transactions, and you get to save on fees, and so people move.
Yeah, what was there were some people throwing predictions out like it wouldn't hit like 25% adoption within
no
like
one
2
would ever
years.
use it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, fees have been super fucking cheap recently. So only the beginning part of that was when fees were really expensive. If fees got really expensive again, people would those numbers would go up even more.
Yeah, when Jameson was on this podcast for Tales from the Crypt, the interview series, he basically said he wants SegWit adoption to be like as smooth and steady and well-paced as possible because it gives us future breathing room in the scaling debates and the scaling solutions. So if we hit sort of a wall where fees start to go up and we have, let's say, 20% room to adopt SegWit addresses, like it gives us a little bit more breathing room in the long run. So just an interesting fact.
The more the better.
Yeah.
The big thing was the exchanges started using it, right? As once the exchanges are sending the majority of daily volume, probably, I assume, like by a long shot.
Yeah, shout out Bitcoin Optech for getting on these big economic players and educating them on how.
But there was a lot of community pressure. Like literally, exchanges were getting crucified on Twitter and Reddit and shit for not adopting SegWit.
They still are. Awesome. Blockchain.info or .com now is still getting.
No one uses it anymore. No, don't use that site. No one use that site. Shitty site.
Matt?
People have been losing money on that site for fucking 5 years now. When do people learn?
Not going to refute that. What else we got here? Gemini insured custody. This is actually a pretty big deal.
I think this is a big one.
So insured by the FDIC, correct?
No. FDIC is insured for dollars, like a regular bank, and then they got Aon on board, like the sponsors of Man United.
Digital assets insurance, yeah.
To do the crypto, which I'm not even sure if it does. Is Coinbase an insured custodian?
I think they have like one.
I believe that some parts of their some sections of their storage are insured by the Lloyd's of London.
I think it's like 1% of their cold storage or something like that.
I believe it's that. But I don't think I don't believe they have what Gemini has just been able to achieve quite yet. So remind me again, is Gemini the only insured one? Because I could have sworn recently there was someone else announcing sort of an insurance deal as well. Was it?
To date, insurers have been hesitant to insure the crypto industry due to a large number of high-profile hacks and have resulted in catastrophic losses over the years. However, we were able to successfully demonstrate to insurers that Gemini, a New York trust-based company, is he saying? I don't know if they're the first. There might be another.
They're probably not the first because the press release doesn't say they're the first.
Yeah.
That's the usual giveaway. But these custodians are really big. You know, for fund managers like Murad, for instance, like you don't, like, where do you store your coins, and how do your LPs like trust that they're stored well, right? And if you have a custodian with insurance, that's a big deal.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, a couple of weeks ago, Kingdom Trust has also announced that they were insured by Lloyd's of London. So those two sort of are the major announcements that we've seen in the last month, sort of in the same vein. And
Kingdom Trust is BitGo now, right?
Not positive.
BitGo, right?
So I believe that acquisition was blocked by the government, but
which government?
The American government, or the financial authorities or something. I once again, I'm not expert on what went through like during that particular merger or whatever, but I believe that as of right now, Kingdom Trust and BitGo are still separate entities.
Interesting.
But anyway, the more custodians, the better. I would never advocate for any of our listeners to use a custodian, but you guys are a step above of traditional retail, and for a lot of people, you know, you want someone to handle all the nitty gritty for you. You don't want to worry about these hardware hacks and all this other shit, and you just want exposure to Bitcoin.
No, and creating more peace of mind for investors to be less hesitant to invest in this asset is huge.
And also, like, these VCs, hedge funds, you know, like I'm not trying to put them under fire, but like some of these guys, like, they have assets under management of like 200 million, like crypto assets, and like there's two people that know how to access the ledger that holds it. You know, like, that's ridiculous. Like, the idea that you're trusting your portfolio manager with private key security at the same time is, you know, a pretty crazy idea outside of this space, and it only exists because there aren't proper custodians. If they could use an insured custodian, then they don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
So it allows more money to come in.
It's a huge get for the industry. Shout out Gemini, working hard behind the scenes.
They only seem to they've been. There's no reason to be angry at Gemini.
I'm trying to get one of their lead engineers on the pod, hopefully in the coming weeks, to talk about this stuff and more. So hopefully we have more in-depth news on Gemini coming in the coming weeks here on Tales from the Crypt. Next story, Bitfinex. Huge cause of controversy in this industry in particular, especially with Tether. People do not like their involvement with Tether and how Tether is structured. It looks like they have a new banking partner. They're no longer with Noble. They are now with HSBC, which is very good at money laundering, as we know from their ties with Mexican drug cartels in the past. So it looks like Bitfinex is bank hopping again. I literally could not give less of a shit about Tether and Bitfinex, but it's something people seem to love to talk about. Thoughts?
In particular, sort of the haircut that they've done to their customers in 2016, a lot of people have been suspicious about sort of their activities ever since. That has really sort of hurt a lot of my friends and their Bitcoin holdings back then. But yeah, I really hope something like that doesn't happen again. Them banking with HSBC, net, all things considered, is a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Adding a little bit of a legitimacy to some of these exchanges. We know how difficult it is to secure banking relationships for sort of cryptocurrency-focused businesses. So I guess that's a step forward, and hopefully other sort of companies that are engaged in cryptocurrency infrastructure going forward, will have an easier time doing that as well. However, I personally do not really use Bitfinex,
Mm-hmm.
but this news is definitely a positive.
Yeah, don't use Bitfinex. Yeah, they got hacked in 2016. I think they lost like almost everything.
116,000 Bitcoin, I believe.
Yeah, it was, and they had like this partnership with BitGo where BitGo was like handling. It was actually one of those situations where Bitfinex was like kind of, they kind of got fucked by regulations, and it exposed the customer more. So the regulations said that Bitfinex was operating outside the law because they were holding a shared wallet for all customer funds. So what they did was they brought BitGo in, and I think it was US regs that they had issues with, and that they brought BitGo in, and what they basically did was they created a multi-signature wallet for every single customer. So when you had like a wallet on Bitfinex, like you actually had a wallet on the blockchain, like a distinct wallet. And the key there was all of a sudden Bitfinex wasn't a custodian, so that, it definitely wasn't a decentralized exchange or P2P or anything, but there was like a little bit of a loophole there. So they were like, fuck it, we're going to like try and fuck with the regs. And the way they set that up, they like skipped a couple BitGo safety measures, and just all of them got drained. They just got like absolutely drained. And then they issued that Bitfinex token that was all the money they lost was representative in the token, but it like traded at a discount for such a long time that basically the theory is that Bitfinex then bought all the tokens up at like a super discount. So like basically everyone took like a 75% haircut because no one thought they were going to pay it all back. And they presumably you could have waited to get your token at full return, but most people never did. At the end of the day, Bitfinex is a bucket shop. It breaks US regs. They've been around since 2013, so clock is ticking. These things never last for long, but they've been profitable. And unfortunately, they also, I think they either own and operate, or like kind of quasi own and operate Tether as well. So they're like really connected. So basically using Tether, Bitfinex is able to finagle their banking relationships into banking relationships for like a ton of different altcoin exchanges, because their primary fiat is Tether. But I think they're probably full reserve. They're super profitable. It's just they're a bucket shop. So like anytime like U.S. government, it's their biggest threat isn't that they're running a fractional reserve. I think the biggest threat is that like at any time they could be one brokered. You know?
Yeah. I never used Bitfinex. Don't plan on ever using it. It is a bit of an ulcer on the ass of this industry. It has been. I'm just tired of people talking about it. Tired of Bitfinex and all the Tether accounts and stuff like that. Like, the sooner it goes away, the better in my mind. Wouldn't keep my Bitcoin there. It's my 2 cents. My 2 Satoshis. Last topic we have.
He rolled his eyes while he said that. So we should crucify him.
Last topic we have. We got a backed competitor announced this week. Eris Exchange to create a crypto market backed by DRW and Virtue. So very similar product structure to what Back's creating, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big deal because it's big guys, right?
Yeah, Eris Exchange is big out of Chicago.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, there's no way, like, how do we hit, like, the kind of capitulation lows that we hit in 2015, 2014, when all these motherfuckers are, like, all releasing shit? That is, like, craziness. This is, like, that. These are big-ass players. Murad, would you like to respond?
Yeah, as I've said, in some ways fundamentals are better, but you also need to understand that during the last cycle, every single person was a de facto Bitcoin maximalist. Right now, you have so many altcoins, so many ICOs, so many different things that a lot of people are sort of spreading this uncertainty about monetary dynamics of these assets. We need to also understand that the market caps are much bigger. Who is to say how far out of touch with reality the move from 3K to 20K in 2017 really was? And was that like too much, or was that just right? Have we already sort of exhausted all the sellers, or have we not? And there are really sort of 2 schools of thoughts on this. One school of thought is that these top-to-top market cycles in Bitcoin are getting longer and longer. This is essentially the 4th cycle that we're going through right now, or 3rd and a half if you count like the very first early ones. But the 2 previous cycles, if you sort of graph them on sort of, if you sort of plot them on a graph, they've been getting longer and longer in terms of time. And if you believe that sort of hyper-Bitcoinization and Bitcoin's purchasing power is growing, if you sort of strip the emotions away, if it's growing in a logarithmic fashion, then it kind of makes sense that the cycles are getting longer. So that's sort of one theory. The other theory that sort of going forward, they are likely to be sort of punctuated by 4-year cycles due to halvings. I personally consider halvings to be the single most important fundamental quote-unquote event that happens.
I would agree.
In Bitcoin's history, because like, as I like to say, to me, Bitcoin's value, like unseizability, uncensorability are cool, but monetary policy and Bitcoin's uninflatable nature is by far the most important characteristic of it. And really, halvings are the events that take us closer and closer to that completely uninflatable reality in sort of the most in the sharpest fashion, all right? And so I do expect there to be I do expect us to already be bullish in 2020. I do expect sort of another big blow off top by late 2021. But if people realize that the next bull market, it's not imminent, but it's only going to come in 2020, then I think a lot of impatient people and a lot of weak hands could dump here. So it's all about the sort of short-term trader games versus sort of long-term value investor, long-term hodler, believer, holding preferences. And if people if I think many people, especially sort of smaller current holders, who don't individually have a lot, but there's like a lot of them around the world. If they believe that this sort of speculative asset, it's not like if they don't think that it's going to go into the sky like immediately or in the next couple of months, some of those people might dump. And I think like that could be one of the reasons why a capitulation could still happen.
Mm-hmm. That's very solid argument and thesis right there. And just to throw in the canned disclaimer, this is not financial advice. We're here
Can we just
discussing.
We should have like a recording of that in the beginning. We should just throw that in there. Did you hear Pomp's recording?
No,
It's like 30 seconds of disclaimer.
Yeah, I'm not big on disclaimer. I'm not an RIA, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, honestly, guys, like anything you put into this, you could lose it all.
And if you don't know how to trade, do not play the trading game.
Okay, so anyway,
Know your strengths.
With Murad, there's two things. The first thing is, every time this motherfucker speaks, I just want to FOMO market buy. Like he's like telling us his bear thesis, right? And at the same time, I love the halvings as well, Murad. They're just supply shocks. They're like these crazy we know that they're existing, that they're coming in the future, but they don't get priced in right away. It's the most ridiculous thing. 1 second. I'll hand you back the mic. We're sitting on the couch right now, handing the mic back and forth. It's kind of intimate. I feel like a lot of impatient retail have already gotten fucking wrecked in the altcoin collapse and are just constantly getting wrecked on BitMEX. They're just going leverage long or short, and there's this whole way they've just been getting liquidated the whole fucking time. And in 2015, we did have altcoins. We had Ethereum launched in the middle of the bear market. Like it was Bitcoin 2.0. Like Bitcoin was going to fail, and we had this new exciting technology. Like if anything, like the altcoin narrative, I think was like stronger back then.
I would disagree. I would say that the altcoin narrative is much stronger today. There are a lot more sort of altcoin teams that are actually like taking this thing seriously. Although I personally believe that the vast majority of them will fail, and Bitcoin is just so far ahead in terms of its monetary networks. But the two things I'd like to say is this: if we go for simplicity's sake, if we go off of the 21 million number, Bitcoin's stock to flow or the supply inflation. In the next halving, it will drop from 3.8% to 1.7%. And I think like that will make people realize that will be such a big step once again towards people being to palpably realize just how hard and sound this money is, and that is sort of the catalyst of the next big bull wave. I will give you a good statistic. During the 2012 halving, that was priced in 6 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
The 2016 halving was priced in roughly 9 months in advance. Of course, as there are more and more eyeballs on this asset, and as more and more people are analyzing this event, I would imagine that once again, it would probably be the speculation around the halving would start 10 to 13 months ahead of halving.
So around like Memorial Day next year.
Right. And the other thing I would like to say is that I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but big whales and big traders in this asset class as of right now, due to its illiquid nature especially, they can really sort of financially engineer these sort of liquidity events. And they can create sort of an initial like mini dump or a mini pump, and a lot of sort of either FOMO investors or scared weak hands, they can really sort of accentuate that move.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the short term, in the long term, for most people, the best thing is just to hold this asset, because I'm sure as all three of us are very, very long-term bullish. But in the short term, sort of big investors, big traders, they can sort of tweak and take the market to in their preferred direction in the short term. And I think there are a lot of people that want to sort of enter Bitcoin, that want to do it at slightly cheaper prices than it is today. And there are sort of people with a kind of power to make Bitcoin go just a bit lower, as well as much higher from these levels, because they want to transfer sort of the wealth, and they want to transfer these scarce illiquid coins from retail and sort of investors and weak hands into their pockets. And so that is sort of one of the scenarios that we should be considering as well.
Yeah, no, especially with how nascent and small the Bitcoin market is compared to the more traditional financial and asset markets of the world. It makes complete sense that whales would be able to move the price, and they definitely have in the past and will continue to in the future. It's just playing within the ripples of the waves they make.
Yeah, they want to get as good of a buy price as possible.
Yeah.
So like do you want? You're going away. You come back in January, right? Yes. So should we make a steak dinner bet on the price? Is it gonna be? I'll take over. We'll be higher than we are right now in January. And what's the price right now, Marty?
It's at 6625 right now on Bitstamp.
6625. So I say it's gonna be higher than 6625. You say lower steak dinner.
So, like the collapse could happen like as early as November or December as well. I don't want to speculate on sort of your proposed criteria, but I would say that I do expect Bitcoin to breach its yearly lows, and I will make a bet that it is likely, in my opinion, to go below 5,500. If that's something that you're interested in considering.
All right, let's put a date on it. January 1st. I'm siding with Murad on this bet.
January 1st. You guys have below 5,500. I have above 5,500.
So my view,
I thought it was 6625.
So this is the statement that I'm willing to sort of bet a steak dinner on. We will go below 5,500 by January 1st.
No. So I can't recover in time, right? So if you think we might go below and then recover by January? I'm trying to make a hodler's bet is what I'm trying to make. I'm trying to say that when you come back, you're going on your trips and stuff. When you come back, if you just didn't pay attention to any of that, we're going to be above the price we're at right now.
Sure. Sure. For sort of interests and excitement's sake, I will bet that the price on January 1st will be lower than it is today.
I'm siding with Murad on this.
Awesome. I look forward to the dinner one way or another.
Murad's made some very good bets. I've been on the wrong side of a couple of them.
Yeah, there's about half a dozen steak dinners that I have been on the receiving end of in the last couple of months. So I'm not obviously not all of my predictions were perfect, but the majority of them so far have been more or less correct. So just to reiterate, if we win, then you are buying a steak dinner for me and Marty, and if you win, then me and Marty are buying a steak dinner for you.
Do you guys buy me 2 steak dinners, right?
I'll buy you one. Yeah,
sure.
Works.
Only fair.
Only fair.
I just want to say that I don't bet against the bit. So if you want a free steak at any point, all you have to do is tell me that it's going to go down in price, and you get one.
So 6,700, right? So the bet
6625.
6625
to be precise.
Okay. So 6625. Lower than that price in January 1st. Sure.
I think that's an easy bet. I think that's an easy bet on tax purposes alone. We're shaking hands right now. Hands have been shook. Another bet. We're gonna pivot here. Murad, keep the mic. We're gonna pivot here from cryptocurrency and get on to another bet that you made, and it became successful. The fight over the weekend, Khabib over McGregor. What were your thoughts? I know you're a big Khabib fan. Big UFC fight. It was insane.
I mean, I had almost zero doubts in my mind that Khabib would win. I bet one of my friends that Khabib would bet this fight, and I got paid. So everything essentially happened exactly the way I expected. Khabib was 26-0 before the fight, 27-0 right now. He's really just an indestructible machine. I think he's the most... the strongest lightweight fighter in UFC history without a single shred of doubt.
The video of him wrestling a bear when he was like 6 years old, I just found that this weekend. It was like, oh my God, this dude was bred to fight. Any thoughts on the after match?
That was so fucking cool.
After match brawls.
Yeah, I don't think that was particularly gentlemanly. It would be much more elegant if he sort of just sort of stayed in the octagon and received his belt, etc. But it got extremely heated. It got extremely personal.
Yeah.
Me being from me growing up just a couple 100 miles away from where Khabib was born, I sort of understand how that culture works. And compared to sort of the West, people there don't really take offense towards their family, nation, religion quite lightly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, it's obvious that things can get very heated and very emotional in the spur of the moment during such high stakes and nerve-wracking events. But really, that's not important. I mean, Conor McGregor has engaged in inappropriate behavior many times himself over the last several years. So what's more interesting to me is the fight itself. And I mean, Khabib won fair and square. So that's that.
Yeah, no, and I do like what he said in the post game or post fight presser, where he's like, "This is a sport of respect," and I think that should be respected going
it was
forward.
Just badass. I want more outside.
They're gonna fight at least 2 more times, I would imagine.
No, but I mean, I want more jumping over.
It's gonna ruin the sport. It's gonna ruin the sport.
It's fantastic.
I mean, it's great for us.
TV.
But they're trying to de-alienate themselves from like the WWE, and if you let that stuff happen,
this was real, right?
This was very real, very real. Apparently, there was like fights all over the concourse, like it was like a madhouse.
I think that's so fucking.
I don't think I'll ever go to a UFC fight. There's too much testosterone.
Would you go to like a gladiator fight?
I don't think so. If
Like,
I was a
let's say-
Roman
let's say there's
2,000 years ago,
people on death row, and if they survive the gladiator fight, they become free. Would you go and watch that?
no, I think we've evolved past that type of savagery. I would hope.
Would you watch that, Murad?
No, I don't like to condone violence too much.
Yeah.
Okay, then no comment.
All right. Anything pressing you gentlemen would like to touch on before we wrap this up?
You got anything? I want to thank Murad for coming over. This was pretty great. We had him in town, so I figured it'd be a net. We both figured it'd be a net benefit for all you guys.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people to talk about Bitcoin with in the world.
We're just trying to no set template, just fuck around and make it work for you guys.
Yeah. So if you're liking it, all right, Murad.
And me and Marty have spent an amazing weekend in Riga at the Bitcoin Honey Badger conference. I strongly encourage all the listeners to attend Bitcoin Honey Badger 2019. And if you are listening to this podcast right now and we see you there next year, definitely come by, say hi. It is one of the top 3 or 4 Bitcoin conferences every year. Strongly recommended. All the Bitcoiners, all the legends are going to be there. So definitely come.
Shout out to Hodl Hodl. They throw an incredible conference.
Just Murad can go fuck himself. It's like I got my flight canceled and I couldn't make it this year.
It's okay, Matt. There's always next year.
I was talking to my grandmother. She used to do radio in the 50s, and she was amazed we don't get kicked off the radio for cursing.
Hey, grandmother Odell? It's that side of the family? Mother's side?
Yeah.
Mother's side or your father's side?
Well, we're trying to... Oh, it's my father's side.
Okay,
It's
Grandma...
not actually doxing me because I've already given up that information.
Grandma Odell, I'm sorry for cursing. I'm sorry we're so vulgar.
No, she thought it was badass. She thought it was badass.
But with all that being said, Murad, thank you again for coming on. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for the invite. Always happy to talk to you boys. Looking forward to more episodes of Tales from the Crypt as well as Rabbit Hole Recap. One of the biggest listeners, and hope the franchise becomes even bigger and thrives. It is one of my favorite podcasts, and once again, thank you for the invite.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind.
Bang, bang.
If you freaks agree with Murad, please go rate, subscribe, and share our podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Thanks for joining us. Peace and love.